Hi, English 1 students. This is Mr. Bainey. Welcome to week 22 of English 1. I wanted to touch base with you very quickly what you have coming up. All right. First of all, you're going to have 7.5 to 7.8 due. And what we're going to be talking about are the following things. We're going to be talking about theme. And the theme is the main idea that weaves the story together. It gives you the why. It gives you the underlying ideas of what happened in a piece of literature or a poem. Okay. Usually this is a statement about society or about human nature. All right. So we think about like the loss of innocence. We might think about movies like Juno or 16 Candles, the coming of age. Another common one that we might see is triumph over adversary. So the little guy beats the big guy, and we see that early on in literature, in texts such as the Bible or the Quran. The little guy slays the giant. All right. So common movies that might have that would be like Armageddon or The Day After Tomorrow or even possibly Jaws. All right. And then you also have the one that love conquers all, which is pretty much so the general theme of every Hallmark movie that's ever been made. Movies like this, common day, would probably be Shrek or the Titanic. Love beats us all. So those are the common themes. Another thing that we talk about is imagery, all right, in poetry. Let's pretend that I can spell poetry right, all right? Oh my goodness. Let's fix that now. No, well. So, we might be talking about what, I'm going to stop this. Hi, English 1 students. Welcome to week 22. This week we are going to be working on chapter 7 again, and we're going to be going from 7.5 to 7.8. And there's a couple things that we're going to talk about. Number 5 and 6 deal with 3 or 4 major things that we find in poetry. And that includes, first and foremost, the theme. Okay, the theme is the main idea that weaves the story together. It gives you the why. It gives you the underlying idea of what happens. So one of those might be the loss of innocence or coming of age. So it might be like Juno or The Breakfast Club or 16 Candles. Typically, this story is about a young person becoming a young man or woman. Okay. Another common theme that we might see is what they call triumph over adversary. All right. So the little guy beats the big guy. So it might be Armageddon or The Day After Tomorrow, Jaws. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, it's one little fish in a giant ocean trying to find his son. And lastly, love conquers all. So that might be something like Shrek or Titanic or any movie that's ever been made on the Hallmark Channel. So, these are just 3 of them, and there are literally several dozen general themes that we see in literature, in poetry, and in film. So we're going to be talking about that. Another thing we talk about is imagery. So great writers don't just tell you, right? They show you. They paint a picture for you. So we're going to look at this quick poem called The Loon, okay, by Lou Serret. The lonely lake, a lonely shore, a lone pine leaning on the moon, all night the water beating wings of solitary moon. To a mournful wail from dusk to dawn, he gibbered at the taunting stars, a hermit soul gone raving mad and beating at his bars. So what mood does the author create using the words that he uses, such as lonely, lonely, lone, solitary, mournful, wail, hermit? So what kind of image do you get? And if you came up with sad or lonely or isolated, then you're right. So, in this case, Lou Serret doesn't just say, this bird's lonely, because there's so much more than that, right? So they're able to paint that picture. Another thing that we commonly use is what we call the setting. And the setting is the physical and social background where it takes place. So you'll see 3 images here, all right? If you look off to your left, so here we know that the culture, social and political, is very different than what we see today because we don't dress like this anymore. So this is, probably more than likely several hundred years ago during the Elizabethan times. All right, and we know that by the gigantic castle in the background. All right, culturally, so these aren't common everyday folks. More than likely, they're royalty or they're very wealthy, right? Much like a common day Hilton Paris, or Paris Hilton, right? Now, if you look at the one in the top right, well, that looks kind of gloomy. It looks kind of scary. It looks like there's about a murder about to take place, right? So that kind of sets the background as well. And if we look at this bottom image, that kind of gives you hope, right? I mean, we think of the beach and we think happiness, all right? So, the setting is very important, not only with what is actually the physical setting is what in this background, whether it's a city or a country or the ocean, different countries, but also the cultural, the social, and the political upheaval. If you take a famous movie like The Notebook or even The Help, I mean, the political and the social and the cultural background of The Help is very different than modern day society, which is one of the reasons why it's such a powerful story. And lastly, we have symbolism. So sometimes writers use common symbols. So if you think of a dove, what do you think of? Most people think of peace. If something is written in the springtime, often spring is a symbol for rebirth, for growth, for newborns, right? If you see a skull and crossbones, often we think of death. If you see the sunrise, again, we think of birth, we think of upbringing, new beginnings. If you see a cross, well, that's a symbol for Christianity. So, so there's really, we use symbols every single day, and that's part of our society and part of what we call symbolic interactionism, right? So certain symbols mean very different things to different people depending on their culture, but these are general symbols that we find in American culture and European culture that are pretty shared across a lot of literature and a lot of film, right? Now, the second part of this is 7.7 and 7.8. There are two longer poems that you're going to read, okay? Number one is a famous one called The Gift of the Magi. And I put a little YouTube link in there. If you just did a YouTube search on it and put Gift of the Magi, it'll pop up. And there's a short film here where they actually act it out. So if you wanted to follow along while you read that, you're more than welcome. More than welcome to. And then also 7.8, you're going to be working with a poem called The Open Window. And I also gave you another link. And you can YouTube or Google search both of these. And if you just type video, you'll find an audio version of it, or you'll see someone act it out. So you're more than welcome to do that. All right. I appreciate your hard work. Keep it up.